So, welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturdays. Everybody seemed to enjoy the last one, so I'm going to do another one. Like I said, this won't be every Saturday. It'll just kind of be when there's something to discuss. I think we have one more topic we might need to tackle that's of some controversial nature. But for this, I have been looking forward to doing this. There's a lot to talk about here. There's drama. There's all sorts of cloak and dagger kind of operations going on. It's a big commitment. We're talking $500 to $600. So I want to definitely touch on this. Before I do, a couple ground rules. Of course, I won't be commenting or responding to your comments. I always read them, but on discussion videos, I never reply. Only read. So let's get into it. Bruticus. Very popular combiner, a lot of people's favorite, not mine, but a lot of people's favorite. Some of the best episodes were his origin stories from Season 2, which had a lot of not-so-good episodes. A lot of people are looking forward to a true masterpiece-styled Bruticus, and it looks like we have two options. Now, we need to clear up some of the confusion straight away. This all starts a few months back. Toy World reveals an image teasing the idea of a masterpiece-scaled Bruticus and Superion headed your way. Their surroundings, I don't know if it's Goldbug or Bumblebee, I can't remember, and I'm not looking at the picture, but you are, so I'm sure that you know by now. I've been saying publicly and privately to anyone that will listen that Toy World should be focusing on these combiners, that what they did with Constructor changed the game. It's very rare that a third party comes along in these days and really creates something that changes the rules and how we view things, and they did that with Constructor. And how did they do that? With parts forming. Parts forming is now, in my opinion, my key to a successful combiner. So I was absolutely almost in a wild frenzy waiting for more images of this stuff to drop. And then images started to drop, and they weren't necessarily what we were expecting. The images of Blast-Off and Vortex started leaving people like, huh? Let's have that Toy World discussion for a minute. In my opinion, Toy World has greatly improved over the years. That being said, one of the things that is plaguing Toy World today is their aesthetic choices and their size. Now, the size isn't hurting them for the combiners, but it's making people second guess their choices for their regular bots. Aside from the size is this aesthetic cue. There's a heavy Studio Ox influence. A lot of people think that Toy World Devastator is from this or that. It's definitely from Studio Ox. The Studio Ox Devastator is right here, and that's pretty much a dead ringer for it, with the exception of the barrel, which they gave you a green one, and it should have been gray. So there's a heavy Studio Ox influence. That's not everybody's cup of tea. It's not always my cup of tea. I love the Studio Ox designs, but not for every character. So that has been a big criticism, and I think none more vocal than with this combaticon situation. I think people were really bummed at how these bots started looking, Blast-Off and Vortex. And understandably so. I mean, there's junk hanging all the way off them. It's like these guys are getting ready to go up on a Mount Everest tour. And they're just all bundled up. I mean, it's a bit much. And it made me second guess my commitment. But then I saw a picture of their combined Bruticus. And I think that is a thing of beauty. And I see that they're using the same type of parts forming hips, which I think is a main contributor to the stabilized combiner that we've come to expect, at least from Constructor. So things felt like they were moving along nicely. So what happened? Well, as the story goes, and I get this information from reading the TFW forums and kind of lurking in some of the groups and so forth, and this is all rumor, it's all allegedly. What do criminals say? Allegedly. Speculation, right? Zeta was the design team responsible for a lot of the Toy World designs, including this Superion and this Bruticus. They've been at odds with Toy World for some time, and eventually said, screw you, we're taking our designs and we're doing our own thing. And they took all the designs with them for their upcoming Superion and Bruticus. Now, I would imagine that Toy World is pretty peeved at this, and I'm not sure if Toy World is going to do another attempt at a Bruticus to try to compete with them. But now, what was once known as Toy World's Bruticus is now Zeta's Bruticus. So people are always saying, like, what do you think about this Toy World Bruticus? And my reply really now is that, what Toy World Bruticus? Because what was once Toy World's is now Zeta's. I'm sure That breakup is an ugly, ugly thing that has made people quite the enemy between one another. And I don't know much more about it, and I'm not sure I need to know much more about it. I'm just sure that it's not all peaches and cream over there. So let's take a closer look at Vortex and Blast-Off. They still look like a nightmare. I mean, look at the junk hanging off of the forearms on Vortex. Look at the junk hanging off of the calves on Vortex. Look at Vortex's feet. Little biceps, huge forearms. The proportions are all over the place. I don't see anything stellar here that would make me indicate tons of paint or any sort of extra details that would make this any more appealing. Let alone the alt mode, which people have a huge issue with, saying that it looks like Blackout from the Transformers movie. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but when it comes to my personal sensibilities, if they're going to make changes and have their little nuances and do what they want to do and their little artistic freedoms and liberties and so on and so forth, I prefer they take them with alt mode than with robot mode or with combine mode. So for me, this helicopter is enough in the spirit where I'm good with it. It doesn't bother me one bit. But let's talk about Blast-Off. His alt mode is much more in line with what we're used to seeing. Maybe not enough purple on that unit, but aside from that, pretty much consistent with what we know from the character. But the robot mode, once again, all sorts of junk hanging off of this guy. Junk on the back, junk on the forearms, junk on the calves. And to me, and just looking at this, I don't know, obviously, I haven't put my hands on any of this stuff. But to me, looking at it, it looks like the wings are permanently attached, which means you couldn't even take it off to clean the bot up if that was indeed your intention. He's also got a little bit of a sassy stance. So in short, I'm not impressed. But we have seen more. We've seen their brawl, which once again looks like he's carrying most of the bot in kibble pieces all over the body. So it doesn't look any more promising. Lastly, we've seen Onslaught. Now, Onslaught to me looks pretty good. He looks pretty clean. He looks pretty consistent. I like it. It may be a little too G1, but at the same time, I think it looks really good. However, he is huge, which we should expect because the combiner itself is going to be a big boy. The alt mode looks like you can do a ton of stuff with it, including the carrying Vortex or Blast-Off and launch Blast-Off, so to speak, from him, and all that stuff seems to work fine, so I dig that. But what sells it for me is this combine mode. And this combine mode is just, it's what I want. Now, obviously the arms aren't the prettiest, but if I had to sacrifice something, I think that's what I would have to choose it to be. We're going to talk more about that here in a minute. But let's talk about the Unique Toys bots. I think these are, at least if you're going with a G1 collection, picture perfect. Now, whether or not the paint and all that kind of stuff and the joints and engineering is all done well, that's anyone's guess. But just looking at the bots, Swindle and Brawl look so money. Like, it's just, it looks like they walked right off the screen, and they also have a little bit of modern, updated panel lines and sculpted details, which really, to me, bring the figure to life and ground it in a sense of reality, which I dig. They look articulated, they look menacing, they look like they capture the essence of the character, and most importantly, at least in comparison, they are clean. But you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. And the price that we may have to pay for the cleanliness of these bots is a combine mode that I'm not sure does it for me. So let's look at the combine modes together. For me, the Unique Toys one clearly beats the Zeta one when it comes to the arms. Look how clean the Unique Toys ones are. They look great. But everything else, I think Zeta knocks it out of the park. Now, you can argue a few things, right? For instance, it should be the front of Swindle that's showing and not the back of Swindle. It should also be, I think that the one piece on Brawl should be bent over for the Unique Toys one instead of just sitting straight up, I believe. I could be wrong about that. Outside of that, the Unique Toys one does capture that G1 essence, but the Zeta one just looks so much better, and it looks so much more secure. The body, the torso, the thighs, the hips, how it's going to connect to the legs and the feet make this seem incredibly sturdy to me. While the Unique Toys one looks like it's kind of using the same sort of technology that combiners have been using in the past, which we all know some have been good and some have been bad, none of them are quite as secure as Constructor. And this Zeta one is definitely using that same technology. Which brings us to decision time. So for me, I'm buying both. Why? because I want a set of bots and I want a set combined. So for me, it makes sense to buy both because I like the combined image of the Zeta one and I like the bots of the Unique Toys one. So, what do we do if we're not going to buy both? I think you have to ask yourself, do you plan on flipping them in and out of combined mode and in and out of robot mode? If you do, my advice, just from looks of course, is the Unique Toys one. If you're planning on keeping them in combined mode, sitting them on a shelf and having them in combined mode for the duration of your collection, from the looks, I think Zeta is the better choice. But here's some concern. We've seen Unique Toys grossly improve over years. They put out that Predicane, which was terrible. And then they put out a number of things which have been good, including the Abominus, which was kind of acceptable. So they have a track record that's at least a record. At least something that we can compare and contrast previous releases from. Zeta, we don't really have anything. The Zeta price point is significantly lower. Maybe it's 60 or 70 bucks. It's somewhere in there. The Unique Toys one are like 80 to 90 bucks, somewhere in there. So for me, they're just cheap enough to take the gamble on. But the question is, how are they able to cut that price? Are they taking less of a profit? That's not my experience with humanity. Are they saving a ton of money from already probably being paid to design things for Toy World in the first place? Probably. So should that have any sort of moral impact on your decision? Possibly. It's messing with me. If they got paid to do something for another company and then they took that design with them when they left and were able to save the prices on that in order to get out a product already with a $10,000 profit, it is a shady business practice, if that's the case, but we don't know. We're not sitting behind these closed doors. Also, we don't know if that Onslaught might offset the price and be like 200 bucks. Probably not the case, but we just don't know. And then the other concern, the last concern, is that are they able to save that much money and give it to you at such a lower price where they've sacrificed some of the quality of materials and build? And that we really won't know until somebody gets their hands on them and gives you an unbiased opinion, which is what I hope to do. So I'm getting both. I will let you know if the Zeta build seems good so far. Obviously, I can't let you know how the combine mode works until I actually combine it. But I will let you know how the materials feel, at least with the first couple releases. As for the Unique Toys one, I'm going to be getting those as well, but I personally don't expect that to be a sturdy combiner in comparison to the Constructor, which I think is the new kind of litmus test that we're using to compare and contrast our modern masterpiece scaled combiners up against. So it's an interesting predicament. There's moral ramifications that you might have to apply, there's quality concerns you might have to apply, and then there's the aesthetic choices and also the prices. Now the aesthetic choices of the Unique Toys one, like I think the thighs are too skinny, and I think that the legs look a little wonky. And I'm just not crazy about the overall look. The Zeta ones, I don't like the arms, but everything else is kind of tickling my fancy. So like I said, I plan on having my Unique Toys one in bot mode and my Zeta one combined. But that's that's an unfortunate sort of circumstance that no one really nailed either or. And also, to be fair, the third option is to keep your Warbitron, which is still a pretty solid combiner, in my opinion, at least in the old school way of doing things to date. So yeah, hope that helped. Hope that was informative. Till the next sit down, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.